Welcome back to the Market Mindset, everybody. Today we're zeroing in on two, arguably of the least understood but increasingly strategic corners of the critical metals or minerals universe, and that's vanadium and fluorspar. I know vanadium fairly well, and vanadium flow batteries, but fluorspar, this is new to me, so this is quite interesting, and I got to learn a lot doing a bit of research here. So why should you care? Well, vanadium is moving from just being a niche alloy metal, which we know a lot from rebar if you look into China and whatnot, but it is a backbone element in grid scale energy storage, and vanadium flow batteries are very interesting, to say the least, when we're looking down the pipeline for batteries that will help power the future here. So the market, as far as fluorspar, better known to geologists as fluorite, underpins everything from EV batteries, for the electrolytes, the semiconductors, to nuclear fuel chemistry and refrigerants. Both of these are dominated by China as well. So today we have our guest, John Lee, who is the executive chairman and interim CEO of CleanTech Vanadium Mining. And it's, once again, this is vanadium and fluorite. They added on this project. They've got the two projects, the Gibellini Vanadium project in Nevada, and they have the Campbell Croster Fluorspar project in Kentucky. Really looking forward to talking about both projects. But really, I mean, we'll let you take it the way you want. But I mean, the fluorite and the fluorspar itself is really fascinating. And this is going to be a lot of fun to highlight to people a niche market of a critical metal that the U.S. doesn't have a lot of. So John, welcome. Great to chat with you again. How's everything going?
Yeah, Andrew, great to be back in your show. I think blink of an eye, it's been a couple of years.
Yes. It was flying nickel, and of course, nickel being critical
Right.
for everything as well.
Yes.
It's great to have you back on to chat about another critical metal.
Yes. Well, for your audience benefit, I've had over 25 years of experience in the junior mining space. Started out as an investor from year 2000 to 2010. So just like many of your audience, I invested well over 100 company, scouring through league tables, comparing ounces and pounds, and doing this valuation on an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah. After the financial crisis, I started a company called Silver Elephant, and my specialization in the last 15 years, I've raised over close to $200 million now through the Toronto Stock Exchange. My specialization is twofold. One is precious metals, especially silver. So I've known David Morgans and Gada and the likes for more than a decade, and they're very good friends of mine. And then the other part of my sort of interest and specialization is in the critical mineral space. CleanTech Vanadium, or short name CleanTech CTV, which is listed on the Toronto Ventures Exchange, is a spin-out from Silver Elephant 4 years ago. So inherited all the non-silver projects from Elephant into CleanTech. And those were a vanadium project and a nickel project. And most recently, we've acquired this fluorspar project. And why fluorspar? Andrew, just before the start of the show, you and I talked about a lot of this deja vu. Started out with rare earth almost 10 years ago, and lithium, again, 10 years ago. These companies struggled until the lightning struck. Yeah. And just think that the North American investors are a little oblivious. And the reason for fluorspar is really to do with China and high tech. Like rare earth, China is a major producer in fluorspar, but it differs from rare earth in that China has just over or around 10 years of fluorspar resource left in the country. Ooh. versus over 50 years of rare earth. But yes. Why would you clear fluorspar? Interestingly, I was just in China close to a year ago in September, marketing our silver company, but all they talk about is fluorspar. And I was wondering why. Why would you care about this industrial minerals that's undercovered, underappreciated, largely neglected at 20 cents a pound? Well, like you said in the introduction, fluorspar is critical in four major pillars. It's all largely to do with energy. Fluorspar is required to levitate uranium for uranium concentration or concentrating to U-235, which is what they call the enrichment. Yeah. So fluorspar is married with uranium, and it's for it to be separated from uranium oxide And from there, in the gaseous state, uranium hydrofluoride is then going through centrifugal force and or diffusion to be concentrated to 0.3 to 5%, and that is U-235 to be fueled as nuclear.
Yeah.
Well, on the uranium power generation front, Andrew, you need 6 fluorine to be married to uranium. So you need 6 times the atoms of fluorine.
Wow. All right.
And then if you look at examine, and sometimes Donald Trump like to run before he walk.
Yeah.
You know, this is a head-on collision with China, not knowing that they need rare earth for its military, for magnets, of all the high tech. Or it's the same fluoride. If you're gonna need a TSMC building a 3 nano planning in Arizona and talking about billions of dollar investment for NVIDIA to build plants in the United States, guess what? You're going to need 3 times or 5 times more power. So that means you're going to need more power for nuclear. You're going to need more nuclear solar farms, and solar fluorine is a prerequisite to texturing the silicon to optimize the shape for absorption of sunlight.
Yeah.
And in order for the base load, in order to treat solar energy as base load, you're going to need energy storage. And as well as Elon Musk talking about building the first LFP battery, lithium phosphate batteries in the United States, the electrolyte it's called hexafluorophosphate. That is the baseline for the electrolyte to be married with the positive ion, whether it's sodium-ion batteries or lithium batteries.
Yeah.
Again, every single battery, every lithium requires 6 fluorine. Every sodium battery requires 6 fluorine for the batteries to work. So, and then last but not least, you need fluorine to act as a fluxing agent for all the steel and aluminum production. So, in order to get rid of all the impurities and getting rid of the oxidation of aluminum and steel, in order to produce the highest quality aluminum for space age alloys for the highest buildings that you build for high rises, you're going to need fluorspar. So for every single initiative that the current administration look to become self-sufficient, whether it is in high tech, in energy storage, in EVs, in steel and aluminum production, and in power generation, fluorspar is a critical element, irreplaceable element in all of those equations. And United States today, Andrew, produce zero fluorspar. All of that is coming from Mexico and China. So we go to the next stages. United States today consumes 500,000 tons of fluorspar. China today is consuming 14 times fluorspar. So even for the United States to catch up to half of the Chinese industrial capacity, we need 7 times more fluorspar than is consuming today. And ex-Chinese production is 3 million tons tops. So mathematically, we're running into a mathematical great wall, and I think that realization is coming to fruition. An epiphany moment is coming very, very quickly.
That's what I love about. Oh, sorry, I was going to say this is what I love about these niche markets is that when you look to see all these constituent elements that make the products that we need, and whether you're talking about data storage, you're talking about all these chips, you're talking about SpaceX, anything, or just steel is in the news a ton here in Canada and the States. You go, well, how do we make it? And a lot of people aren't that interested. I am, and you go, well, we need these components, and when you realize there's a gap here. There's a big problem. We don't have fluorite. We don't have that, or we have very little of it, or we're not mining it. What are you going to do? And you're already fighting with China. What are you going to go ask them for it?
One thing I just want to share with you, sort of going back to chemistry 101, of which we spend quite a bit of time, is if you look at the periodic table, right? Just about every element is needed, but yet United States produces not even a third of it.
Yeah. And
specifically on fluorine, it is the most toxic and corrosive element and one of the lightest elements. And this being underutilized until the start of the 20th century, year 2000. Because if it is so toxic and it's so corrosive, the substitute of which sulfuric acid and hydrofluoric acid was sufficient to do the job.
Yeah.
However, if you look at, say, the semiconductor industry, remember 10 years ago, you had a Motorola phone and you take this selfie picture, that's like the lowest resolution, right?
Yeah.
And these semiconductors are building on 50 nano size. But now you go from 50 nano going down to like 3 nano. And these ASML machines and TSMC machines you're looking at dissecting molecules and wavering patterns on the molecular levels on like a nanometer.
Yes.
And guess what? Only fluorspar can do the job in texturing and etching the wafers, the glasses. And the fluorspar is doing the cleaner's job, kind of like Pulp Fiction. Fluorine gas is injected in all these high-tech laboratories and in order to clean up, venting, just eating away all the debris and silicons and all whatever else. Same much to do with solar panels too. And so fluorspar is playing that irreplaceable part of this high-tech world that we're evolving into.
I'm glad you, because I just watched just 2 days ago a video on ASML about how they make their chips. And I would urge anyone to watch it, even if you're not really into tech or not, even if you just watch 5 or 10 minutes of it. It's fascinating to see what they're doing. It'll blow your mind that when you're talking about nano cutting and whatnot, you have to see it.
They are splitting light into photons. Yeah. And they were texturing on the subatomic level. And if you can imagine sort of, requiring the size of 1 nanometer, like I don't even know 1 to the minus what.
Yeah.
And that's where a fluorspar come in. And I think, Andrew, one of the questions justified being asked by investors, so we just announced the news not even 10 days ago, we traded 5 million shares, which is 10% of our float, is why is fluorspar so undercover and nobody knew about it?
Yes.
Really, it's got to do with the nature of the role that fluorspar plays in. So it is what I call the Robin to the Batman. Remember, like, for example, right, if you talk about, like, I understand Trump saying, you know what, you need steel for car making, you need steel for building everything in the infrastructure, roads, highways, cars, buildings. But so understand people that they need secure steel production and iron. And the same with batteries. So Donald Trump's talking about building a nickel smelter because nickel is the cathode composition of a cathode for the batteries. And same with semiconductors. You need to build semiconductor plants. But like rare earth, it's playing the supplemental role. It's kind of like a Scottie Pippen, right, to Michael Jordan. Everybody knows Michael Jordan, but Michael Jordan retires as Michael Jordan's salary gets more expensive, kind of like MNC 811. We talked about the cathode in nickel, manganese, and cobalt. Now it's being replaced by iron phosphate and now lithium, which is the storage of the electricity, is getting a little bit expensive. So Chinese are building sodium-ion batteries.
Yep.
However, they need a second in command, which is Scottie Pippen, which is fluoride. The other substitute for fluoride in this supplemental role to be married to these dominant positive ions is oxide. But as you know, Andrew, the problem with oxygen ion in electrolyte and in all the different application is that ion is oxygen oxidizes, and oxygen is not as lethal in that, so it'll wander around. The bond is not as strong as fluorine bond to the nuclear to the lithium. And secondly, is oxygen heats up, and that's why you got all the problem with the Tesla batteries with oxygen electrolyte substitutes.
Yes.
And certainly if you're talking about energy storage in the tens of gigawatts range with the solar farms, the oxide-based electrolyte is just not an ideal suitable candidate in Nevada weather. That's 150 degrees Fahrenheit out there.
Yes. Yeah. You've brought up so many things that are fascinating. And we were talking about, kind of joking about, sometimes we're so laser focused on our industry and mining and that's the base for everything. We're very early into things. And I remember we were talking about rare earth here and thinking, when is the U.S. going to move on this? And not, you're hearing a lot of
10 years ago, Andrew. It was 10 years ago.
Forever. Yes. Yapping about it, knowing that this was a problem. And it wasn't until yesterday, the day before, that Apple comes into the game. They could have came into the game 10 years ago at a lot cheaper. We both know that. But for $500 million into MB, which used to be Moly Corp, it's MB Polymer. California, yeah. So $500 million. That's a serious investment into molybdenum and what they've got going with rare earth as well.
But you know what, Andrew? Usually, the last time that Apple was milling about a vertical supply chain secure of that was cobalt, right? And that was top of the market.
That was tough.
The difference between rare earth and fluorine and fluorspar is there is plenty of rare earth elements available. There's plenty in the United States, as you know, in Canada, there are plenty as well. The dominant, the reason China is dominating in that area is because it started the recovery of metallurgy a lot earlier. Yes. So I do believe that the rare earth bottleneck will be overcome in time as technology get caught up in the separation and the recovery of rare earth. For fluorspar, however, is a different animal because China is running out of rare earth. They're scouring rare earth all over the world right now. If you just care to Google China fluorspar, foreign investment, they are big time into Mongolia. They're big time into Africa.
Yes.
And like I said, the reason I was a bit early to the game because I was in China last year, and that's why I found out about it. And we also happen to have some presence in Mongolia, and I was just there. And China has taken up all the majority available fluorspar projects in Mongolia, and China turned into a fluorspar importer from being an exporter since early 2020. And all of that is because of the EV. Every single battery, every lithium element, you require 6 times fluorspar. And United States relies entirely on Mexico and China for its import of fluorspar. And part of that, because of that, Andrew, CleanTech spent almost a year to have finally secured the project in Kentucky. And we're one of the 2 companies that we know that has exposure to U.S. fluorspar projects in the United States. I believe we're the only one that has a resource, even though it's historical in nature. But we're really the only company right now in the entire United States of a company listed on the TSX, Canadian listed market, and OTCQB that has a U.S. project with a historical resource.
So this kind of leads me into thinking that there's likely, and you're probably looking into it right now as well, U.S. Department of Energy critical material like grants or incentives or Defense Production Act things that you could be looking into, because this is extremely critical. Whether they know it or not, they're going to come to terms with it very soon.
You know what? They know. I think the problem is sometimes there's a disconnect between the higher ups versus. So U.S. Geological Bureau, I believe it's 2000, around 7 years ago, classified fluorine as one of the 34 critical minerals. So, and there is quite a bit of documentation about the importance of fluorine. But yeah, it's a bit of echo chamber, right? The message has not been propagated to the guys at the top. But I definitely do believe it's a matter of time. And if you look at the price trend, fluorspar, even though it's underappreciated, underinvested, but the price of fluorspar doubled from 2000 to 2010. So you were looking at around 3 to 5 cents. That's talk in pounds because people understand North American market. So it was around 3 to 5 cents a pound in early 2000, and by 2010, it's getting up to about 10 cents a pound, and it went to 15 cents a pound in 2020. But in less than 5 years, the price went up 50%. So if you look at that trajectory, it's been steady. It's not steady, but it's got a 10% compounded annual growth. But now it's going, the curve is going steeper and going exponential. And we don't see that letting down because, we're seeing a renaissance in nuclear power. We're seeing explosion in energy production, particularly all the growth, literally, of power generation in energy production is coming from solar, which the cost is getting down to 3 cents a kilowatt hour, which is around 50 times cheaper than uranium. And then if you look at the energy storage cost, it's also gone down more than 80% from 5 years ago. So then you look at this. So then if you look at the common element in both solar panels and in the energy storage to make the solar energy a base load, you're going to need fluorspar. And so the energy storage is the single biggest factor that's driving fluorspar going forward. I want to talk briefly about vanadium. Why it hasn't taken off the way maybe fluorspar or lithium and sodium are. Vanadium is about right now trade at $6 a pound, right? And sodium could be half for 10% of that price. And that's why vanadium struggle to be the mainstream energy storage. And so then because the volatile nature of vanadium, and also vanadium is 80% vanadium goes to common steel rebar, and China is going through a real estate crisis.
Yes.
The picture is very different from fluorspar. About 25% of fluorspar is used for steel and aluminum production, so that's been fairly steady. But then about 30% of fluorspar is going into energy production, energy storage, batteries. And then the other 30% is going into uranium, nuclear enrichment. So if you look at the composition of the fluorspar demand, over 60% is related to energy storage and energy production. And then you get that kicker in terms of semiconductor, right, coming in to that equation. Yes. Then I think this is an area where when you're investing in fluorspar, you are not investing in, say, rebar like vanadium. You're really investing in energy storage and energy production.
Yes.
And into an area where United States has zero production, and it's way underproduced. Like another anecdotal empirical point I was looking at, about 2010, United States and China were producing the same amount of energy, electricity. Now China is producing 2.5 times more power than United States. Yep. In order for United States to become the number one artificial intelligence power, you're gonna need at least double, if not triple, electricity. Where is that gonna come from?
Yep.
If you're gonna start building batteries, right? You're demanding Tesla to build its own batteries, otherwise it's gonna double the tariff for auto imports or battery imports. Where is electrolyte gonna come from? So while people are focusing on other critical minerals like lithium and sodium, and nickel and rare earth, I don't think we're too far in front of. I don't think we're too early in the curve, and I think we're just in that inflection point.
Yeah.
And I'm still a bit shell shocked but disbelief actually that even though we had a bit of volume, but it's not to the extent that we were expecting in terms of volume. And I think people are starting catching up to and I can understand that, Andrew, because when I started like a year ago, I was like, why would I care about this industrial mineral that I don't even know where it's in the periodic table?
Yeah.
But the more we study about it, some of our shareholders started buying. That's why you see the sort of share trading volume is in an elevated level, but it's not like we traded 5 million shares a day. We used to trade less than 100,000 shares a day, and we're trading like 500,000 shares to 1 million shares a day, fairly steady.
So you're getting the traction and interest, and this is kind of reminding me in a little bit of a macro sense of the antimony story from a year ago, where all of a sudden people kind of put 2 and 2 together, go, wait a second, if we want to make these chips, we need antimony. So then all of a sudden a couple of antimony projects just took off because the realization hit that, wait, do we have that? Or where do we get it from? Or where are we going to source it? And people are realizing, and they're putting 2 and 2 together. They can see it every day in the news with the tariff talk, is that this realignment of the U.S. saying you're either with us or you're against us, they're shoring up where they're getting all of these metals and materials. And when you've got a project that's on U.S. soil, that is very interesting, to say the least.
You know what, Andrew? Like I said, my specialization is in the critical mineral space. So I started 15 years ago. We know the antimony market very well because our silver project is in Bolivia, and Bolivia has one of the largest antimony reserves. The audience got to be clear about these critical minerals doesn't have a lot of volume, a lot of trading. Secondly, a lot of them don't have a common exchange. So they're trading over the counter, bartering trade. So this applies for uranium. This applies for antimony. This applies for vanadium. This applies also for fluorspar. And as well as moly. You remember about 5 years ago, moly zoomed up, right? And now it's come down quite a bit. I would just caution that antimony, again, is abundant. It's not as concentrated as, say, fluorspar, of which the reserves are concentrated in 4 or 5 countries. And antimony is used majority for fire retardant. So I think there is when you see a price of something goes as, especially for critical minerals, of which it's not a very big market, it's a bit of an opaque market. There is the industrial element, and then there's the investment element. So I just want to caution a bit. Sometimes the narratives, right, got twisted a bit, and that everybody's focusing on the fundamentals. I am far more bullish of fluorspar than I am with antimony. It's a market I know very well. Very well. Yeah. I think you're less inclined. Another word to put up, I cannot call the top, but I think you're much less inclined to see the sort of knee jerk on fluorspar as you do maybe with moly or antimony in the days or years to come. And if we just look at it casually, if you go to fluorspar.com, of which we own the domain, that look at a 20-year chart, you will see that this is not that we're the third inning of a 9-inning game.
Yes.
So I think that the just in terms of coverage, the number of companies of fluorspar right now is just way undercover, flying under the radar. But the fundamentals could not be more bullish. And they're adding into that geopolitical factor that China produced 60% of the world fluorspar. It doesn't have enough. It's relying on another 10% from Mongolia. So the world has only 30% of fluorspar left. But a country cannot function without fluorspar. If it has a steel production, it has a nuclear plant, if it does EVs, you have to have fluorspar. Oh, also, fluorspar is involved in pesticide, herbicide, dental. 20% of the pharmaceutical prescriptions require fluorspar. It's a conversation for another day.
Yeah,
I'm not sure the motive or the benefits of fluorspar in your drinking water. But like I said, let's stop it for another day.
we can leave that one aside. Well, let me ask you a quick question before we kind of sum it all up. What's the production to get the fluorite? Is it onerous? Is it because sometimes vanadium, people go, oh, the production of it, the chemistry becomes a bit more onerous. And
right.
Do we have that with the fluorite?
We are more bullish of fluoride because we've done our research. Fluoride is majority of the fluoride rests in 5 or 6 countries. China has a good reserve, about 50 million tons, about 10 years. South Africa has good reserve, and then Kenya, some countries in Africa has good reserve. Then you're looking at the next one is in Mexico, but there is limited fluorspar available in South America, in Australia, in Canada, and the United States. Fluorspar occurs as a very structurally controlled mineralization in calcium fluoride. So it's not like you can stumble onto like a Grasberg, right? In Indonesia, like you can do like a 50,000 ton per day and walk in the middle of something and discover a fluorspar porphyry. It is, I would say, akin to a sort of a VMS sort of deposit, massive sulfide. So you have a structurally controlled 3 to 5 meter vein.
Yeah.
You need to concentrate the calcium fluoride, usually naturally occur between 20 to 40% or 50%. You need to concentrate it, you kind of float it like you do with the typical zinc or lead sulfide deposit. And so you need to upgrade that to about 70 to 80%. So that would be good enough, what they call the met spar. So that is the grade you chuck into fluxing for steel and for aluminum production in the smelter to eat away the impurities. And then when you get up to about 95 to 99%, that's the acid spar. So that is the spar you use to marry with uranium. You used to go into electrolyte, and then you goes into semiconductors. Overall, it's a fairly easy. It's a fairly standard flotation procedures.
Okay.
And the fluorspar, I think the key there is in terms of impurities, because in order to get acid spar, right, the pH has got to be right. And the other impurities, even it could be very small quantity, but they cannot interfere with the chemistries of a battery or somehow reacts with uranium in your plant. So, but overall, I would say fluorspar production is price inelastic because I mentioned to you, it's not like you got a big fluorspar project somewhere in the middle just waiting to be activated.
Yes.
And then, and as well as you know, like any project now in the United States or North America requires extended time for permitting. And lucky enough, the project that we acquired is in the most prospective Kentucky, Illinois belt, and it's a private land, which means there's very minimal federal permitting required.
That's big. I was going to ask you that, like, because I don't know anything about Kentucky as far as mining. I would immediately go, oh, cool. So tell me a little bit about what Kentucky's like as far. I mean, you've got the permitting; it's private land, so that's great to know. Tell me a little bit more about Kentucky itself, how that will work.
Right, the Kentucky-Illinois border, the area, about 300 square kilometer area, is the most prospective fluorspar belt in the entire United States, and there is production about up to 10 million tons till about the early 80s. So in that district, there are about 30 to 50 projects out there of various degrees of exploitation and exploration. Kentucky today, I am not aware of any base metal production, but there is an oil and gas production with shale production. So, and we're looking at the sort of a state permitting. I think they're all gravitated or tailored towards fracking, right, and towards oil and gas production, which is okay because we're looking into as an mechanized underground operation. The mineralization starts from surface, but it goes quite vertical towards the plunge quite vertically and extend to over a kilometer in strike. We don't anticipate to have great difficulties in putting that mine into production. And I think we're in an area that will also welcome a lot of new employment. And so I think we're starting the process, mapping out the steps required to liaise with the Kentucky state to put that project into production. But you're looking at very standard flotation that does not have extensive footprint on surface footprint, nor require extended sort of retrofitting in facilities and building some very high tech, high emission facility to it's all hydro flotation to get that fluorspar concentrated to commercial quality.
That's good to know too. And to wrap up, I think it's humorous too, because if my understanding is right, you started off like in tech in Silicon Valley, didn't you? Okay,
yes,
so in a weird way, you're going right back to the center again with all the critical metals and materials that you need in order to produce that stuff, which you very started at, which I think is kind of interesting. Did you ever think that you'd come full circle on this way?
Oh my God. I've been at it for 25 years now. Never have I just picked up this investment and running a company as a hobby. I haven't made a lot of money to it. I'm a very good investor. I can call timing, like the macro picture, right?
Yeah.
But the struggle that we have, or I have as running a company, is that it's not like, okay, I caught the top of the market and now I want to make an exit. Like if you're running a mining company,
yes,
it's not that easy to call the top. So we got into silver in 2015, and shortly silver price more than double. We got into the vanadium market in 2017. Vanadium price went up 10 times.
Yeah.
We went to the nickel market in 2021, and not even 18 months later, nickel went up 10 times. And so we do have a track record, not necessarily in developing a mine because it's very capital and labor intensive. And also, contrarily speaking, industry requires the most capital and most patience to develop a project.
Yes.
It has a sort of an audience, right, that has the shortest fuse, especially in the junior mining space. So unfortunately, every time there's a down market, John Lee's company is the first one on the chopping block because the company has very strong fundamentals, but it's just that we don't have a track history of the BHPs and the Rio Tintos. Yes. Having said that, we have an incredible track record in spotting a trend just on that inflection point. And so we talked about vanadium, we talked about nickel, we talked about silver. We've had 3 presidents in the before where early investors were able to make multiple times of their money in very short order. And I think that this fluorspar is going to be a really home run. And in terms of structure, if I may just expand a bit, Andrew, on the company share structure, when Silver Elephant spun out the CleanTech Vanadium, Elephant subsidiary, our subsidiary insiders capped 50% of CleanTech's shares.
Yes.
So we have an incredibly tight share structure. The nickel project, which we talked about in Manitoba, that we acquired, we had to sell the project to the First Nations. I mean, they got something like $300 million in grant from Trudeau's government, and it's just kind of like, hey, John, you're a microcap. Why would I need you for? So we have to kind of land up parting amicable ways. So we still got about just under $3 million in cash. We're not looking for financing. Our current market cap, CTV, is trading at 3 cents. And the $4 million market cap with $2 million cash. Our market cap when the IPO, when it came on your show, was $1.20, $100 million market cap. So now to recap, we are 80% cash with the valuation. We have a vanadium project that's fully permitted with the record of decision from Bureau of Land Management that we spent close to $30 million in Nevada. And we just acquired this project, which is the only fluorspar project listed on the Toronto or US exchange with a resource available in the most prospective belt in the United States, and with the guy that's running the show that understands the project very well and well connected to all the major investors and off-takers requiring fluorspar. I just bought about almost 2 million shares in the market. Andrew, I think this could be another 10 baggers, and I don't say that lightly because we've done that before. But this is such a strong fundamentals, and we don't have any shadow volume coming out of the woodworks, and we're not going to raise any money. And the insiders on average cost basis something around 30 to 7. We IPO at 70 cents. I took down like $500,000.
Yeah.
And the stock is trading at 3 cents.
So there's upside. You know what? I am fascinated by niche markets that are critical and desperately needed. And it was fun to do the little bit of research to get ready for this interview, but I'm going to do a heck of a lot more because this is fascinating. I love these types of things that we don't think about. Even being in this space, and I hear it for the first time, I go, "Oh my goodness! Like, what's the supply demand? Oh my goodness!" And you see it sitting in the U.S. where they're gonna, once they realize they're gonna want it, and if they see that this could be produced reasonably fast as far as mining goes, there could be a real story building here very rapidly. And it's been fascinating, John, to have you teach us and walk us through what fluorite and this critical gas, well, it's a metal that becomes a gas.
Yes, chlorine gas.
Fluorspar, and it's fascinating. So thank you so much. I'm going to do a lot more homework on this because this is very interesting, and hopefully we'll have you back on to go.
Yeah, two more things.
Go ahead.
2 minutes is.
Yeah, of course.
Since we announced the news, that was on July 2nd, we can't really control the timing, so we traded around 7 million shares. Not a lot of money, but nonetheless, it's a fairly chunk of our float. An investor reached out to me, and he was an ex-Merrill Lynch derivative trader. And he studied fluorspar when he first bought his first Tesla 14 years ago. And he went up to Mongolia, which is one of the largest fluorspar reserve, top 5 in the world. And he bought like 10 projects fluorspar. Oh, wow. And he told me that, John, I'm so glad you came on. You are 14 years late, or I was 14 years early. And he said that, John, being early is like being wrong. And
sometimes it is, yeah.
You know what? In 9 months, he cashed out $15 million.
Wow.
For the first 14 years, it had no takers at all.
Yeah.
And now he backed $15 million, sold the majority of his portfolio. And now he's left with one last project in Mongolia, of which he's trying to negotiate and sell for $40 million. And I come to the same conclusion. Now, if you look at the composition of a battery, all the expensive stuff, right, like exotics, like cobalt and nickel and manganese, all of them is being replaced. But the fluorspar was the common denominator, and that's why he got into it. And just to conclude is come to our homepage, CleanTech CTV. We are publishing some articles, and we are churning out some multimedia shorts, videos about how fluorspar plays a role in uranium, how fluorspar plays the role in batteries, and how fluorspar plays in semiconductors. So these are all sort of 60-second shorts that you can recycle through fairly quickly. And we also provided some background on our Chemical Crosser project. And I also encourage you guys to, your audience, just Google Mines Available United States and fluorspar and fundamentals of fluorspar. I think there are some limited articles available. And also, feel free to reach out to me at jlee@cleantechctv.com.
Perfect. Well, John, that was fascinating. Like I said, I'm going to do a bit of homework on this, and we love these niche markets. And I really appreciate you coming on, tell us all about it. Have a great rest of the day, and look forward to chatting with you again and following up on how things are going as this story develops.
Such a pleasure to be back on the show. So I look forward to sharing additional developments in the weeks and months to come.
Excellent. All right. All the best. We'll talk to you soon.